Well, howdy YouTube family, it is Bolt CRNA coming to you again with another day's topic. Today we're talking about some questions and answers that you guys hit me up on Instagram and asked me about. We're going to get into them. I had another video a few weeks ago about this, but I wasn't able to get to all of them and I didn't want to leave some of you guys out. So there's some juicy ones in here. Let's get into it. Let's start the first one off with a bang. What gave you the confidence to begin giving info on social media as a student? So this, we have to rewind the clock. I actually started YouTube 2015, middle of 2015. This was when I was a travel nurse. I was studying for my CCRN at the time. I was travel nursing across the country. I was planning on applying to CRNA school. Like that was my ultimate goal. I knew that I had that in mind, but it wasn't a for sure thing. And I hadn't even interviewed at a program yet, let alone received a letter of acceptance into a program or started the program. That came well over a year after I started my YouTube channel. So if some of the videos are private because I went back and they're so cringy, my first couple ones, that there's quite a few that are private right now. So you probably have to pay me a lot of money to see those videos now, but there are some videos from back then that you can go scroll to the very back on my YouTube channel and see. But yeah, so I was doing social media before I started CRNA school. And I actually plan to stop doing social media and YouTube. I was gonna just stop doing the channel when I got into CRNA school, because the whole reason I did the channel back then was because I wanted to post my adventures as a travel nurse. I wanted my family and friends to pretty much see what I was up to. It was a creative outlet for me to do while I was traveling by myself. It was pretty much just a fun side hobby. I had no goals or aspirations to do YouTube long term. But when I started CRNA school, I thought I would post one video talking about like 5 simple steps to get into CRNA school, because I knew a lot of people asked me about that personally in my personal life. They would say, hey, how did you get in? How can I get in? There was a ton of mystery about it. And I realized when I was Googling it online and looking it up on YouTube back then in 2016, early 2016, there was nobody on YouTube who was a CRNA. There was nobody talking about getting into CRNA school, what it was like to be a CRNA. There was nothing. And I thought, well, I'll make this one video and then I'll drop off and do my own thing because I'm gonna be busy studying. And there was such a response to that video and so many people who were interested in it, who were just blowing it up way more than my travel nurse information before. I thought, well, maybe I'll make a couple more videos and just try and give a little more information. And that began the process of me just realizing, like, I should keep this up. People need it, people want it. There's a vacuum here of nobody doing this. And along the way, there's been more other people come on board, like other CRNAs who have jumped on and they've started doing YouTube videos. And the community's grown, and I love that. I love that, Instagrammers became big on, creating CRNA Instagram accounts and all that stuff. So everything grew from there. But yeah, it originally began as not a plan to be a CRNA YouTuber. Oh, someone wants to know about the surge in COVID nursing pay versus anesthesia work. I just shot an entire YouTube video about this, and you guys should have seen it already. It's probably last week or the week before that I uploaded it. But yeah, essentially totally different things. COVID nursing pay, being a bedside COVID nurse, is pretty much hazard pay. You're risking your life and you're taking your chances with a deadly virus, and you should be paid hazard pay for that. And so yeah, that's totally different from base pay as a CRNA doing anesthesia work. Someone wants to know about the future of nursing and anesthesia post-COVID-19. Honestly, I think besides the fact that our community and our world in general will be more cautious about wearing face masks and hand hygiene for quite a long time from now, I don't think many things will really change after COVID-19 is handled and under control. There will probably be a vaccine similar to the flu vaccine that people will get every year or so to update themselves to make sure they're maintaining immunity to the COVID strain. But beyond that, I think things will continue on the way they were before. What are the best sources for anesthesia implications and comorbidities for management plans? Honestly, there's a ton of textbooks on this, and back in the day, everyone just had to carry around a handful of complicated textbooks that you would have to read through and reference. Nowadays, you have apps like the Vargo Mega Anesthesia app and the Vargo, I think it's Coexisting Disease app. Those are 2 different apps. But between the 2 of those, you have pretty much almost any information that you would want directly related to anesthesia and how you would manage certain cases and different pathophysiology related to those cases. Vargo does not pay me. I've never even met Matt Vargo, who is a CRNA, in person. I've communicated with him online a few times. So I'm not paid at all to say this. I just use his apps, and I like the content he puts out there, so I support it. So yeah, I say go out there, support him. He puts great work out there. Medscape is another app that I use if it's not anesthesia related and it's some kind of obscure medical disease or something that has nothing to do with anesthesia. I use Medscape, and that usually gives me information. And also Google Scholar is a good source. Up to Date is a good source. If you're working through a university or a hospital system, they probably will give you access to an up-to-date account. Do you think the care team model should continue to have a place in anesthesia? Depends on what you mean by care team model. Do I think physicians and CRNAs working together on anesthesia teams is important? I think it's awesome. I think it's great when you collaborate. I think there are definitely people who are specifically trained in a certain subspecialty area, and they know a lot more about that subspecialty, and that they should lead teams or be a consult for teams on those types of areas, say like pediatric cardiovascular or something like that. But do I also know CRNAs who I know have handled pediatric cardiovascular extremely well and could manage those cases? Certainly. So that's my ultimate thought on that. I believe their care teams are awesome in places that need them. I think CRNAs are independently licensed anesthesia providers and can operate solo, and I believe physician anesthesiologists are independently licensed and can practice solo. I also think they can practice together. Do I think medical direction, which is maybe what you mean by care team, is a good use of our money and billing? No, I don't think that's a good use. I think collaborative care is the future of anesthesia, and I think most practices have already started transitioning to that, and more will in the future. Is it intimidating being on your own at first after school? What's the learning curve like, or do you hit the ground running? This depends on your program. Most programs, since pretty much all of them are 3 years doctoral programs now, you've got 3 solid years to really get comfortable in your role as a CRNA. Your 3rd year, your program really should be enforcing into you a sense of independence and autonomy, and kind of like letting their hands off of you a little bit and allowing you to step out on your own with some guidelines, of course, and some protection and supervision, but letting you get the feel for what it's like to be on your own. My program luckily did that. They encouraged a lot of autonomy and a lot of the idea that you should graduate being comfortable handling all aspects of anesthesia pretty much independently. So yeah, a lot of our rotations as a 3rd year, we ran rooms by ourselves. We had a CRNA or a physician who was directly over us who covered the room, and we had their cell phone number, and they would be there for intubation and emergence. But otherwise, we would just call them if we needed anything, and we managed the case. They didn't micromanage us. They didn't tell us how to do the anesthesia. They monitored us. Of course, you had to prove that you knew what you were doing and you were adequate and that you were competent. But once they knew that about you, they let you operate and function like a CRNA with supervision. So yeah, that's how I think it should be, and I think once you graduate from a program like that, you're ready to hit the ground running pretty much. Would you pursue a relationship before and during CRNA school? So I did date a resident. She was in one of the hospital rotations that we were in during my 2nd year, and it was fine. But I will say that anyone you're going to date needs to understand that school is going to come much first. It's going to come first, and everything else is going to come way 2nd and 3rd. So as long as you're in a relationship where that person understands that you don't have much free time, you're not going to be the best person for them in a relationship, in the sense that you're not going to be around very much, you're not going to be able to offer as much as you probably would normally, I think it'd be fine, and luckily for me, someone in residency totally understood, because they were in the same boat where they were stressed and working all the time. So the rare time that we had, we would hang out together and just unwind and de-stress. And so it worked out pretty well. How did you approach studying while in CRNA school? And any tips or suggestions, please? Studying is going to be different for every person because it depends on what ways you learn. I found that in CRNA school, I had to use every way to learn to get things to absorb, because you're trying to smash so much information into your brain so quickly. It's unlikely that you're going to be successful with only one method. What I mean by that is you may have to do a little read and writing in order to get some of it to stick. And then you might have to do some auditory version of it. Like what I would do is I'd record myself speaking what I read, and I would read and then I would write down notes during the lecture. Then I would record myself speaking the lecture notes. Then I would listen to myself, the recording of myself speaking the lecture notes. I would listen to it while I was running or doing laundry or washing dishes, or maybe just laying on the couch, or even sleeping at night. Sometimes I would just play it in the background, the lecture notes. And then I would quiz myself. There was things like Quizlet and stuff, so you could quiz yourself. Then I would do study groups. By the time I'd gotten enough of the information in my head, we would all get together and we'd do study groups, and we would talk about the topics, and we'd write it out on a whiteboard. And sometimes I would draw things out as a graph, and sometimes I would draw like a spider web of like this concept, and then to this concept, and to this concept, and then that concept, and I would kind of link it all together and try and tangibly make it work for me. And then you would go to clinical rotations, and you would try and use the information you learned in your head to apply it to the clinical situation of what you're going through, maybe with its second gas effect and nitrogen, and you're trying to visualize how it's working in the body and stuff. So anyway, that's like kinesthetic way of learning it. So yeah, you're going to find that you're probably going to need to use all methods of learning in order to stay ahead of the curve and make a decent grade in CRNA school. How early at a new job do you think we could ask for a letter of recommendation from a charge or a supervisor? I would say minimum of 1 year. And there are nurse managers who straight up will say they will not write you a letter of recommendation until you've been there for 2 years. They're very, very, very used to ICU nurses coming in, and their goal of getting into the ICU as a new grad is pretty much just to get into CRNA school. They are tired of hiring people just to have them leave after a year or two and then hire another person that they train, because ultimately your first year in the ICU, while you're being trained as an ICU nurse, you're mostly in training really for your first year in the ICU, especially as a new grad nurse. So if you leave them right after a year or so, they've just pretty much wasted their time training people. So from their perspective, I understand it. And so yeah, I would say minimum of 1 year, probably best to do 2 years. Any classes you would take before CRNA school to make things easier? The only class that I tell people to take before going to CRNA school that they didn't already take in undergrad is pathophysiology. Take a master's level or graduate level pathophysiology course, because it does give you a leg up in the sense of understanding pathophys a little bit stronger, but it also, some programs will allow you to take the graduate level pathophys course and substitute it for the course they would give you in their CRNA program. Now, not all programs do this, so you need to contact the program first and ask them and make sure that that particular course at that university you're looking to take, they will take in sub of their course. But yeah, there were a couple people in my class that did that, and that really helped them out. All right, a couple more and we'll be done. Could you share your knowledge of non-compete clauses within contracts? So a non-compete clause is often popular in providers' contracts, and that essentially means for a anesthesia group that you go and work within, if you leave within a certain amount of time or break your contract or anything like that, you cannot just go down the street and work within 10 miles. They'll have a different set of mile radius that the non-compete clause coincides within. Usually it's like 30 miles. Some non-compete clauses can be really crazy and be huge, like circumferences from that hospital's group that you can't work within. So you have to be very careful of those. And I guess the idea of it just means it must link back to like primary care physicians or people who would maybe get a group, or surgeons who would have like a group of patients who they would see and treat, and they would develop a relationship with them, and then they would leave that group and then go form their own independent office and then bring all their patients with them to that new office and make profit off of them there. So I guess these larger provider groups are trying to block people from being able to do that. It doesn't really make that much sense in anesthesia because we don't usually break off and go form an entire group on our own. It's possible, but not very common. And usually patients don't follow an anesthesia provider because we are a service specialty, so we provide the service for surgery. Patients don't usually hand pick us. So it doesn't really totally make sense for our field, but it does affect a lot of your contracts, so be careful of that when you sign contracts as a new graduate. All right, guys, that is everything. I got to all of your questions. Let me know down below if you agree or disagree with anything I said. Sometimes I, give my opinion. You have to remember everything I say is really coming from my opinion. I try and be unbiased on a lot of things, but there's no way to be completely unbiased. Also, if you're looking to get into CRNA school and you haven't joined the memberships yet, what are you doing? The memberships are over on my membership tab on the channel page. You can join up at any of the membership levels. The SIVO Surfers, like the basic 99-cent a month one that gives you the free study guide and gives you access to some behind the scenes stuff. If you're looking for more like mock interviews and really like intense one-on-one stuff from me so that I can help you get into a program, that's gonna be the Ketamine Kings level. But anyway, go over there, check those out. Let me know if you join into the memberships and I'll connect with you guys there. Also, hit that like button. What are you doing? Hit the like button, smash the like button, destroy the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe too. If you're not subscribed, there's a ton of people who watch these videos, but they don't subscribe. I don't get it, guys. Just hit subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. Every Monday, I come back with more videos like this, and you can tune in then. All right, that's gonna be everything. Until next time, bolt out.